This is The Back Pass, a podcast for sports nerds by sports nerds.
On tonight's episode, we are doing Around the Grounds again. There will be some NRL, cricket, NFL, F1, and we definitely are going to talk about the English El Clasico. Hello and welcome to the Back Pass. My name is Ali Mawala and today I'm joined by Shivank, Gurpreet and Kevin. Welcome, lads.
Hello, hello.
Hey, it's going.
Hello.
So it's been a full-on week of sport. There's been so much going on all around the world. So, Kevin, let's jump right in. The NFL Combine is going down. What's been happening in the NFL Combine and why? What the hell is a Combine?
So it's ironically, or I guess kind of sweetly named, the Underwear Olympics, which is probably a very accurate way to describe it. It's a series of events in which athletes are pre-selected from the college football leagues, and they perform, feats of athletic endeavors, really. So you have things like the 40-yard dash, verticals, broad jumps, 3-cone drills, shuttle, bench press. And for quarterbacks, you have throwing drills, and wide receivers have catching drills. Running backs have specific running drills as well. And it's basically a tool for which will lead into the NFL draft, which happens in the end of April, so a month away. And it's how they comprise or put together a ranking of who's the best player to draft. So the athletic component's one part of it. The Combine also has a interviewing and medical examination as well. So they look at, pre-existing conditions, heart conditions. They do, if they have an ACL injury, they'll do a check to see how far they are away with independent doctors. With the interviews, they do psych evals, they do comprehensive, profiles on each of the players to see how they fit with particular teams and how they work from a culture perspective, where they need work, training habits, things like that. So it's really this all-round mecca of testing that occurs prior to the draft.
So it sounds like a job interview for 3 days straight.
It's not 3 days; it's 5 days straight. And it is one of the most. It's as a spectator, it's probably the most amazing sort of thing that you see next to the Olympics, because you have athletes that are of all different shapes and sizes. Some who are, like 300 pounds or, 250, 285 pounds, and they all do the same event. So you see how fast that they run the 40-yard dash. And it makes really interesting spectacles because, if you see somebody who's, say, 280 pounds, so 280 pounds is roughly around, I think, 110 kgs, or somewhere around that mark.
130-ish, yeah.
Yeah, 130, yeah. So if they're doing a 40-yard dash at the same speed or at the same time as somebody who's 200 pounds, that's pretty impressive. And it does become a really cool thing to watch.
To be honest, everything you're describing, Kevin, sounds like the Caracas sales. We're just watching, just literally watching them parade around. Look at this beautiful horse, that we've raised here. How much for this one? Everyone, have a look. But also, Kevin, tell me, what is a Nolan Smith and why is 4.4 that impressive?
Okay, so Nolan Smith is a defensive end who.
So he's a big guy.
Georgia. Yeah, he's a pretty big dude. He's listed as, and I'm pulling up his measurables as we speak, so I could give you some accurate stats. He's measured as 6'2", so about 2 inches bigger than myself. He's 238 pounds, so about 240 pounds. He's in the range of, I think that's, if somebody wants to do the math, that's what, 108 kilos?
110-ish.
108.
Yeah.
Yeah, 108, 110 kilos. And he just ran a 4.39. A 4.39 in a 40-yard dash is what you would expect from a very fast wide receiver. So somebody who's around about 200 kilos. 200 pounds.
200 pounds. So 40-yard dash is, just for the metric-minded, is 36.58 meters. So not quite like a 50-meter mark, but that's still substantially fast. That's like a prop, right? Like that's a prop. That's a Dane Cole's running 4.4 and 4.39 seconds, running 36 meters in 4.39 seconds. It's still impressive.
Yeah. It's mightily impressive. I think he's got a total RAS score of like, he's in the top 99% or 95 percentile of like athletes tested, which is really amazing. But, putting Nolan Smith aside, the actual, I guess, star of the combine, was this quarterback out of Florida called Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is a QB, and QBs typically aren't super fast. And I'll put it in perspective. The QB that ran the fastest was in 2006. It was Reggie McNeil. The next fastest was 2012, Rob Griffin III, and he ran a 4.41, right? Anthony Richardson ran a 4.43. And I just want to put in perspective, Anthony Richardson's also, from a weight perspective, compared to Robert Griffin III, RG3, those of you who follow the sport, Robert Griffin III is 223 pounds, and Anthony Richardson's 244 pounds. So there's like a 20-pound. Yeah, it's huge.
It's about
difference.
10 kilos off.
Yeah, 10 kilos off, and almost 0.3 of a second faster, 0.2 of a second faster. That's insane. And he had a fantastic workout, and it happens quite a lot actually. You have these players who outperform all the metrics that they're expected to perform, and who's really stand out, and they eventually push themselves up the draft board. And why this is really important, I think we mentioned this in the past, but that where your draft also influence what you're going to get paid in your first 4 to 5 years of your contract.
Is there actually is there a connection between these metrics and how good you are actually on the field?
That's a very interesting question.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
So, I mean, we've got history in different sports where you'll have players who are of significant size and athletic ability not really being able to translate onto the pitch. What I will say is that the upper echelons of the NFL right now, especially in quarterbacking, so players like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are highly athletic. So if you're able to convert on one of these players, then you will have a significant advantage. Like when I'm saying significant, I'm talking about the difference between making the playoffs and potentially going on a playoff run and winning the Super Bowl. So it's a risk. And like if we go back in history, I'd say probably the hit percent rate is less than 10%. But yeah, I mean, it is like one of those things, right? You buy a lotto ticket so that if you win big.
And in terms of buying lotto tickets as well, Kevin, shifting gears to the NRL and your Newcastle Knights, as the NRL season got started, they bought a lotto ticket with their new fullback.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Hope he does well and replaces Potter.
I think he's a good buy. I think Lachlan Miller, I think his name is.
Yes.
He's he's a good buy from the Sharks. I think he was never going to be able to, play fullback for the Sharks. And he's a type of player that we need in our team. Very consistent fullback, able to create a little bit, play the link-up role, and support well. I think if you put all of that on Ponga's shoulders and also expect him to be the primary target for the opposition, it becomes too much. And that's what happened last year. The stress is too significant. He'll do too much. He'll injure himself and then get taken off the field, which ironically ended up happening anyway. But, I still think that there was a possibility that we could have won that game if Ponga's on the pitch. The way he was playing that last 10, 15 minutes, he sort of started to click a little bit.
There was definitely chances. There was definitely chances. And what about that call from the independent doctor, Gurpreet? I think there were some calls for giving the independent doctor the man of the match against the Warriors.
Oh, we need all the help we can get. We need all the help we can get, Ali, because I had no nails left by the time that game finished. I was genuinely watching that game from behind the sofa. It was so tight. And knowing that we would get bantered by Kevin if we coughed it up, it was just it just made it worse.
Yeah, likewise. I was watching the game while cooking dinner, and I was like, I don't want to talk to Kevin today. I want to avoid texting him for a bit.
It's the thing about having like a token Knights fan in the group. Like it's generally quite good for the banter, except when you play them and then you're on the ropes against them, you really don't want to talk to them the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like having a Chelsea fan in the group when you lose 7-0 to your nearest neighbors.
Funny that.
I was waiting for it to come around. I was just waiting.
Jumped a little bit. Jumped a little bit earlier.
I mean, at least he's admitted that Chelsea are like the Knights, overpaid, overrated, no history.
Hey, when did history matter? You guys have all history and nothing in the present.
Actually, I would say Knights do have history.
Yeah, we actually have 2 premierships. I'd like to remind all the Warriors fans in the room at the moment.
We have
there you go.
We have one minor premiership. So that counts for something, right? Finishing first on the table.
Oh yeah.
And I'm pretty sure we did that because the Bulldogs got deducted points right at the very end of the season, yeah. So we defaulted into first place.
I'll take it.
But yeah, it was a welcome back for the NRL and the Dolphins' very first NRL game ever, and they pulled out one out of the hat, pulled a rooster out of the hat,
yeah.
And
plucked a chicken.
And they crushed it. They crushed the Roosters completely done. So now the Roosters are offensive, basically minced meat, ready, waiting for the Warriors.
Look, one thing I'll say about the Dolphins is when you have Wayne Bennett in charge, was it really any doubt that he wasn't going to win his first game? Like, I just felt like that was like a Wayne Bennett sort of thing to do, to win the first game in front of, a home crowd and just put one over a good team. Like the Roosters are a pretty decent team, but just really put the upset on.
You have the Dolphin team is full of a lot of solid players who are just super professional, who just go in and do that one job that you need them to do. And they're not, there's a couple of really good players in there who have X factor, who can bring something a little bit different. But that big chunk, that forward pack is all experience. They've got experience in the centers. They've got a couple of young players, but they've got a lot of experience around them to guide that team and just keep them calm and keep them running along on the field.
Yeah. Shout out to a Kiwi player, Jeremy Marshall King. He played really well. Yeah.
He was great. A beautiful break to the middle. So moving on, Shivank.
Yo.
You've been watching the F1 and the cricket?
Yeah, I'm just happy to say that I've had a good 7 days of continuous sport watching. The fact that I get to distill it down in 7 minutes is a bit of a disappointment. So, but hey, enough sevens. I sure hope you guys are missing CR7 right now.
Well, United don't have a number 7 at the moment, and that's probably why.
That's probably why Liverpool filled the gap. Here's the 7.
LFC 7.
At least Siobhan's going to run out of jokes by the time we get to the football section. So yeah, keep going.
I probably won't. Like, the biggest joke in world football, I happen to be on the bench for the game, Harry Maguire. So,
Oh, poor Harry.
Ooh,
Even when he's
gosh.
not playing, he gets dragged into this.
He still gets blamed for the defense.
hey, he's not getting blamed for the defense. He could have been the difference maker between 7 and 14. But no, yes, I did, watch the F1 race last night. I am very sad to report that the season's over before it even started. I think Max Verstappen is basically going to take the entire season by storm. He's going to win by whatever's the next superlative after a landslide. I think I've lost words for the guy now.
What do you call that? Is that just like a seismic shift or like a?
I don't know. He's like playing in the French League of Football right now. Like, he's Kylian Mbappe, and then he's playing against, I don't know, semi-professional guys. It's a joke if you finish the first race 19 or however many seconds away from like your nearest competitor, who just happens to
11,
be your teammate. Yeah, 11 seconds. Who just happens to be your teammate
with the exact same car, right?
with the exact same car. So it's like you come into the season expecting Red Bull to do worse than they did last year because they have a penalty on them for overspending. So they can't use the wind tunnels as much. They have restrictions on a few other things. And so you expect the landscape to be a bit more competitive. For the record, I'm a Ferrari fan, living in disappointment for at least the last 10 years.
Yeah, you're also a Chelsea fan, so you'll know all about overspending.
Hey, we have won more Champions Leagues in the last 10 years.
In the last 10 years, I love that like caveat. Yeah, let's continue.
There is one thing I'd say about Ferrari, though. When Ferrari are doing terrible in Formula One, they tend to make good cars. And I have seen the latest Ferrari cars to come out, and they're pretty nice to look at.
They might as well focus on something else because
they can only concentrate on one thing at a time.
One thing. Yeah. Unfortunately, the focus isn't where I have my focus on. But no, anyway, you expected the landscape to be a bit more even this year. You expect Mercedes to do better. You expect Ferrari to do better. You see the reports. Ferrari's got a good straight line speed. So you expect, it's going to be a tight race. Come race day, Ferrari has an engine malfunction. And so their best driver, Charles Leclerc, doesn't finish the race. Verstappen breezes through as if he's basically just running on an empty track. And yeah, season's over even before it started. Speaking of seasons ending before they even start, it's kind of like Test cricket right now, where you're expecting a 5-day game to finish on either day 2 or day 3.
Well, I'm pretty sure a couple of weeks ago we said Test cricket was pretty boring.
No, it's not.
And then the last week, there's been 2 very, very, very interesting games of Test cricket going on.
Like, amazing games of Test cricket. Massive shout out to the Black Caps when like winning by that 1-run margin is why we all love Test cricket so much. Like, you can see the game swinging in both directions with every session changing. First day, you're like, okay, yeah, England's got this wrapped up. Second day, you're like, oh, actually, New Zealand stage, you could come back. And then the tide swings the other way. You look at the lead on the last day, you're like, nah, this is not competitive enough. And what happens? New Zealand win by 1 run. So massive.
And that one did last 5 days, Shivank.
That did last 5 days.
Yeah. And it's as you say, Shivank, it was off the back of the hammering that we took in that first test match, where, let's be honest, Test cricket was pretty boring when you're getting hammered by that margin. And then, as you say, the first couple of days, you're like, let's just...
I just want to say Shivank just missed a window, but anyway, continue, Gurpreet.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll have my moment again.
And then...
I'll make it a point to at least bring up United 7-0 at least 7 times.
What count are you up to right now, Shivank? I'll help you keep count.
I'm up to 5.
He's on 18. He's done it 18 times already. There has to be a quota. It's like, at a certain point, Ali, you've just got to mute him.
Well, I guess you have to do it as many games Chelsea have gone without scoring a goal.
Ooh.
So
Yeah, I'm on that number. Next number is United's loss. Hey, we scored. We finally scored. So you've got nothing on us anymore.
that is true. Took the 83rd minute, but it did happen.
53rd.
53rd. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well-
Shivank was keeping a running total of like the number of minutes since a goal.
400.
Do you just have a stopwatch for each game where you just like start and stop between each of the goals?
I wish I had one for last night.
You don't need it.
Since when do you start watching Man U games? Or are you a secret Liverpool fan?
Oh no, I'll watch any game for the entertainment value.
I was just going to say, for Chelsea's goal count, you didn't need a stopwatch. You would need an actual kind of like a big clock and like a sundial and kind of measure the weather patterns too while at it.
Maybe an abacus.
Yeah.
Nah, if the drought had gone on for 7 more games, yeah, maybe.
Anyway, back to Test cricket. Gurpreet, you were saying.
I was just moving quickly on. I was saying it was what I really admired about the Black Caps in their game was like there was a certain point where they were just gone, and I've got to be honest, I stopped watching probably after about 2 days. You're like, we're following on, we are going to get hammered, but I think the fight back from about day 2 onwards was just incredible. But even then, you felt going into that final day that there wasn't enough runs. And I'm just going to say the one player that I think just epitomized the spirit of the Black Caps was Neil Wagner. The guy just bowled his heart out, and it was a great example of where an individual may not be incredibly talented. He may be a one-trick pony, but the sheer effort just to drag New Zealand back into the fight multiple times was just incredible.
Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, that's basically the thing that makes him as amazing as he is. Like, he never gives up.
Absolutely. And look, there was multiple points, even on that 5th day, where you thought this game's gone, right? Like, we had them 5 down fairly early, but then that 5th wicket partnership got set, and you're like, okay, this has been exciting for the morning, but back to work because they're just going to close this out. But Waggy picking up those wickets, and then even right at the end where Anderson hit that 4 and they needed 2 off, just 2 runs. And I had a meeting on at the time, so I was like, "Oh, it's done. All right, I can't bear to watch Anderson hitting the winning runs." And unbelievably, for that finish, the type of thing that's almost unforgettable.
I completely agree.
And I was actually quite enjoying the low scoring India Australia game as well. You get so sick of like bowlers getting tonked around that you enjoy a good low scoring kind of 100 all out type of test match that threatens to be over in like 1.5 days.
Yeah. I mean, it adds a new dimension to the game.
I do have one disappointment from that match, is that in the second innings, Australia only played 1 reverse sweep shot. I did not see enough reverse sweeps from the Australian batsmen.
Yeah, but I think the game would have been very different if they tried a few reverse sweep shots. Let's be honest.
I've got one very interesting stat from that game. That game lasted 7 sessions.
He's making this up.
I am not. It lasted exactly 7 sessions.
Can we get a VAR check on that one? Third umpire.
I'm actually gonna. I'm gonna look this up. I don't believe him. This is.
The game ended on day 3, session 1, which is the 7th session.
That is true. That is the 7th session.
Lunch. Surely lunch counts as a session.
I mean, it does if you're in school.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Wow.
But no, hey, the one thing I will have to admit, though, is I'm a bit disappointed in myself for not having kept up with the WPL. Just before the show started, we were discussing the scores and everything. And from the sounds of it, it has been very exciting for the average viewer because there's been quite a few games with 200 plus scores. Like everything is being tonked left, right, and center.
Yep.
200 strike rate seems to be the new norm. So it's good for the fan, but I'm sure we have some opinions on the general level of bowling on display.
So, debatable point. I think we should look to take down the patriarchy in the women's game as well.
Agree.
Personal opinion.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
But should we do it after all the fans kind of get on the bandwagon? Like wait till, they get the public going and watching the games and supporting the players, then bring the patriarchy down. Because right now we need to bring the fireworks to the women's game to get, that global attention.
Yeah.
And the only reason we're talking about the WPL right now is because of the scores and the 200 plus T20 scores. And, this crazy strike rates of 300 something.
Completely agree.
So, ironically, I did a bit of research into this, into women's sports overall. Statistically speaking, more men watch women's sports than women do. And the ratio is significant between women watching men's sports versus women watching women's sports. So there's probably a conversation to be had about how do we get more women watching women's sports. And that could be another way to increase the number of eyeballs we have on some really interesting matches, not just in cricket, but, in soccer as well.
And that poses an interesting question. Is that also because all sport that we know, most sport that we know, has been designed by men and not by women, and women just are playing it now? And maybe it's not as attractive to female viewers.
Well, I think there is a factor of the reasons why women watch men's sports is probably very different from why men watch men's sports. So, 100%. I think there's a factor involved there that not just getting women watching women's sports, we're getting them more to watch men's sports as well, and then maybe that carries over, and maybe we can apply those same techniques there. I know, like the NFL, for instance, have pushed, and rugby league have pushed, dedicated games or rounds devoted to women, especially mothers and partners who support the players in the game, and also promote the women's leagues. So that I know that helps a little bit, but there are aspects of the game that probably don't translate as much, and we probably need to put in a lot more effort to get it to work.
Yeah, I agree. There's also a case of the match going public as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how much of it is down to like the on TV, the primetime slots, and as far as games go, like the sort of, and I know this happens here when the rugby's on, but you kind of have the All Blacks kicking off at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. and there'll be a women's game before that, right? Which is
so
kind of
like 5 p.m.
Yeah, which is like a 5 p.m. game, which for most people, and this is both men and women who are going to go watch the All Blacks, you're generally not going to rock up at 5 p.m. for a 7 p.m. All Blacks game at Eden Park. You're probably going to leave home around 4, so you'll maybe catch the back end of that game, and the same on TV, right? Like,
given Auckland traffic, though, Gurpreet, you're probably going to get there just 5 minutes before the All Blacks kick off.
Yeah, you'll probably miss the first half of the All Blacks game as well, right? So, I do wonder, to your point, Ali, how much of this is just down to there not being enough money in terms of sponsorship and the same level of TV money that we see in the men's game? Because ultimately, that drives viewership, in my opinion.
Of course, it's also, we're like, oh, why don't we like piggyback, the women's game onto the men's game? But then there's a point in which you're like, well, by basically making it a curtain raiser, you're kind of also telling everyone it is a curtain raiser for the men's game.
Exactly.
Why not have it the other way around?
Why not have it the other way around?
First and then
100%.
the women after.
100%.
Do you think So do you think? So who are the demographics that you're looking to target? That's probably the first thing I'd ask, because there is an advantage of having the game earlier. You could get more young people involved, family groups to come in and watch the women's game. Late games tend to be a bit of a problem if you have kids, especially young kids.
Yeah.
So there is that aspect. I remember a few years ago that a lot of the sports, so not just cricket, but also rugby league, they would do days where, especially like at the MCG, where you would have maybe two AFL games, and then you would also have before that a VFL game as well. So it becomes like a family outing event, and everybody's got like, food trucks around the area, and it becomes more of a thing.
Yeah. So there's definitely, there's definitely more being done about the women's game, but there needs to be more done, even more than that. And, we spoke about kind of like the investment in the different areas and different parts of the game. And now we have a women's Super Rugby as well, kind of kicking off, and we have that in play. So hopefully that's kind of building up to that right crescendo. So that kind of takes us into you, Gurpreet. And I think everyone knows what you've been watching.
Yeah.
And
I mean, let's get it out the way. The Manchester United women's football team, WSL 1, number 1 on the table. Huge win over the weekend. Played 14, won 11, drawn 2, lost 1. How could we not open up with that? That's fantastic. Top
amazing.
Top of the table. If you look at where this team started out, phenomenal. The team are doing absolute bits. That was basically what I was.
Don't Chelsea have like the best players?
Yeah, we also have 2 games in hand. And if we win both games in hand, we go ahead of you guys by 2 points.
Games in hands are just pipe dreams.
Games in hands are just pipe dreams. I love that.
Well, kind of. I mean, it's better than losing 7-0.
I suppose we got to talk about that. We
have to talk about that.
But before we get to the 7-0, kudos to the women's team for doing as well as they are. This is uncharted territory for them in the last 10 years, and I say this with utmost respect, because for a club of United stature, the women's team was nowhere near the upper echelons of the women's game.
I mean, this is probably, you've absolutely nailed it, Shivank. It's been a total disgrace the way Manchester United have treated the women's team. The fact that their games usually aren't even at Old Trafford. You talk about
not even in Manchester, right?
to the point that Kevin was making, where the ratio isn't the same. How could it be when it's treated in this way, right? And I think it's only recently where United have started acknowledging just how much work needs to be done in that area, and it's just amazing to see the team doing so well.
Purely in terms of fan perspective on the teams and the investment and the infrastructure, I wouldn't be wrong to say United are at least 5 years behind Chelsea in how the women's setup works.
Absolutely.
And which is why it's also surprising that the team itself has made such progress to be challenging Chelsea.
Correct. Yeah. So good on United women, and long may they make the competition much more competitive than it usually is.
Yeah, and also, I mean, shout out to Mary Epps, who at the FIFA the Best Awards won the best goalkeeper. Her speech, really, I'm not going to quote any of it on here, but if you've got a few minutes, go and listen to it. Absolutely incredible speech. So humble, so down to earth. Casemiro won. Casemiro made the team of the year, which was an outstanding achievement, but she was the best goalkeeper in the women's game, which again, for a team that's been so far behind some of the dominant teams in Europe is absolutely amazing. So a lot for United to celebrate. But those things do not include the recent performance at Anfield.
I mean, of all stadiums in the world, it just had to be at Anfield, right?
Well,
you couldn't pick a worse team to have a 7-0 scoreline against.
Yeah, but that's the thing. This is kind of like Liverpool's season in a nutshell. They go through these spurts, right? So in 28th August, they beat Bournemouth 9-0, right? In August, we were like, yeah, they're back. And that was after United had beaten them at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
So they lost to Manchester United. They all went, we got to do something about this. They went out, they smashed Bournemouth 9-0. They win the next game after that. Then they draw and then they lose. Right? And then they're kind of like, they're starting to stumble backwards again. And then come October comes around, they lose another match. And I can't remember who that was. But then they go out and they beat Rangers 7-1 in Scotland.
7?
Yeah, 7-1. They win their next 2 games. Then they lose again. And then they win and lose again. So they just, and now they've basically, about a week ago, just over a week ago, they got beaten by Madrid in Anfield. And then after that, they were toothless against Crystal Palace. They've come out against Wolves, picked up a 2-0 win, and then gone, we're going to pick everything up and we're going to put in everything into this United game. And they've smashed them. They've smashed them 7-0. It's interesting to see what happens next with Liverpool.
And look, it seems farcical to say now, but when you look at that game and you break it down in chunks, say 20-minute blocks, United in that first half were the better team. I thought Erik ten Hag got his setup perfect. It seems ridiculous when you look at the end of the game. And I thought going into halftime at 1-0 kind of flattered Liverpool. If you look at who had the better chances in that first half, I thought we definitely created the better chances. In that second half, I think what effectively happened was we conceded 2 really poor goals really early on. And then I think Liverpool are the type of team that does what the All Blacks do, where when they get going, they are not going to stop, right? And we've seen this time and time again where the All Blacks have sort of played Australia or South Africa, and we've gone on these little bursts where a close-ish game is just the score just blows out. And I guess the one criticism of Ten Hag here is perhaps naivety. At 4-0, the game was done, and you're perhaps looking at damage control. We perhaps kept pushing. But, let's be honest, the trajectory of the club is correct. Ten Hag has made very few mistakes. These players, most of them have been brilliant for the last 3 months post-World Cup. And something like this was always going to happen. I'm just glad it didn't happen a week ago in the Carabao Cup final. Yes, it hurts. And as you said, Ali, it particularly hurts because it's them. It hurts tonight because Shavank's on the show and he wasn't a week ago. But, we take it. We take it.
I make better runs than Timo Werner when it comes to shows and appearances.
Oh, look, I would say I make better runs than him, and I don't run.
Well, at the end of the day, it's, you lose 1-0, you lose 7-0. It's still, it's just 3 points lost. So 3 points dropped.
Except when things matter on goal difference.
Well, just, as we said earlier today, I think in our WhatsApp chat, is that United are definitely not going to win the Premier League on goal difference this year. We can definitely rule that one out. So if you're betting on United winning by goal difference this year, just don't bother.
Yeah, although
try to get your money back.
Although I do think this is interesting, Ali. You're right. When you boil it down, 1-0 or 7-0, you've lost 3 points. But I think the one theme here that Ten Hag needs to look at come the summer is the fragility, right? And there was an aspect of fragility there. Like, we saw heads drop and they dropped across the board. And look, we aren't privy to exactly what happened. We're, at the end of the day, we're sitting on our armchairs and we're commentating. It could have been fatigue. It could have been a mixture of things. It could have been the emotional high of the last 3 or 4, beating Barcelona, the celebrations from the Carabao Cup. It could have been all of those things together. But the reality is that under Ferguson, we would maybe have a performance like this once every 3 or 4 years. This is...
Oh, I was about to say 7 years.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But this is maybe the 6th or 7th capitulation we've seen in the last year.
6 or 7 years.
In the last year, right? In the last year.
Yeah.
So
there's been a few drubbings.
There's been a few drubbings.
And this is... I think this is perhaps the next step for this team is... You don't capitulate like this when nothing goes your way, because there is a standard, right? And that standard isn't just when you're winning, but it's also when you've got no chance of winning.
And I think there's a difference between when Liverpool beat United under Ollie in that drubbing and this victory.
Yeah.
There is a difference in how it feels, even though the margins are similar, or this margin is greater. But this does feel different, and it does still not feel like, oh, we need to start talking about this team being in big trouble.
Yeah. It feels, honestly, and I remember this night really well because the All Blacks won the Rugby World Cup final that night. And I remember saying, I will take any result in any sporting contest that comes for the next 4 years. And what came that night was the 6-1 drubbing at Old Trafford. And this feels a little bit like that. And at the time, that was unprecedented. Under Ferguson, it was unbelievable. But it felt like that. It felt like it was something that could be righted. And United ran City mighty close that year. We actually lost the title on goal differential, so it ultimately did matter.
That's why I did bring it up. But hey, this year it must have been the Warriors beating the Knights, which made you go, I'll take any result for the next 7 years.
Honestly, when I was hiding behind my sofa thinking of Kevin's smug face when the Knights were camped on our line, I was genuinely like, I'll take any other result as long as they hold on.
See, I'm a seasoned Knights supporter to the point where I know deep in my bones when we're not going to score a try, and that was one of those moments. It was. I can feel it. I can feel when it's not going to happen. We can have all the pressure in the world, and something will happen, and it'll go wrong, and I know it's going to happen.
And it's just as simple as the ref coming and tapping Ponga on the shoulder, be like, "Mate, you got to go off." He's like,
I posted it in the chat. Your Param said, there's a good chance that the Knights are going to take this, and I was like, "You're counting your chickens too early, mate."
Well, on that note, let's wrap it there, guys. Thank you very much for the banter, Gurpreet, Kevin, and Shivang. Thanks for joining us, to the listeners as well. If you want to get sports nerdy with the team, follow us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at the Backpass Pod. We will catch you next week. Thank you for listening.